Contemporary Hollywood cinema is peppered with many a remake and reboot. This is likely because remakes provide producers and filmmakers with a safety net that does not exist with original content. A fan base. They either remake older films, banking on nostalgia, or they tend to go for recently released foreign films to bring marketable stories to American audiences. And this is exactly what David Fincher did with his version of A Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. In 2009, a Swedish series of films was released that was directed by Niels Arden Oplev, a Swedish director, and based off of novels by Stieg Larsson, a Swedish author. These were successful and grossed a total of $10 million in the US alone. And in 2011, at the tail end of the original success, Fincher's version was released to audiences worldwide. However, I would argue that Fincher actually did so much more than just a remake of its Swedish predecessor. His version was a complete reinterpretation that boasted more effective storytelling techniques as well as several of Fincher's trademarks. So let's talk about his trademarks. First, there's his color palette. A single frame from any of his movies would tell you that it's a Fincher film. His films are often dark and prominently feature shades of blue and sometimes green. In warmer shots, he uses a lot of yellow. Blacks are also consistently featured, but what I find most interesting about the blacks in his shots is that the details are not lost in the darkness. He definitely tailors his coloring to the story being told. And in this film in particular, the colors were used to highlight the brutal Swedish winter. This definitely isn't something that you truly feel in the original version. It was much easier to understand that the US film takes place within the span of a year because of how it shifts in season. So next, let's talk about the lighting. The Swedish version more or less used conventional lighting techniques and didn't really explore it as much as a tool for storytelling. But Fincher, on the other hand, like The Godfather's Prince of Darkness, often uses lighting to serve the story. He makes use of a lot of practical lighting, and he doesn't actually shy away from the shadows. Just look at how this lighting makes this guy look so incredibly gross. Lighting is also prominently used in this film to make subtle hints towards the nature of the character of Martin, our main antagonist. Look at how dim his face is when you first see him. And again in this scene, Martin walks into the light, revealing all of information while he is in complete control. He walks back into the dark when he begins talking about his dark past, showing that his mind has wandered elsewhere. Another thing that Fincher likes to do is that he likes to stretch the moment. He does this to stress the importance of what he is about to reveal. For instance, in the Swedish film, we are first introduced to Lisbeth like this, while in the US version, Fincher uses a lot more shots and cuts to prolong the moment.
Lisbeth, Mr. Dirk Broder.
How do you do?
Another hallmark of Fincher's films is his camera movement. His camera is usually still and locked down, but when he does move the camera, it is always in a motion that is very, very smooth. And it is always with a purpose. I mean, this shot in particular took 2 whole days to shoot. Just compare these shots from the original with the US version. Look at how much better that is. Fincher does this for multiple reasons other than to get cooler looking shots. First, to create an omniscient camera that provides the audience with a more voyeuristic experience. He wants you to forget that the camera is there and wants you to experience the events as the characters do. A perfect escape. And secondly, he likes to have control. So next, let's move on to camera angles. Fincher's camera angles are also very, very well thought out. For example, when you first meet Mikhail, he had just embarrassingly lost an extremely high-profile lawsuit, and is shot to seem very, very small and desperate to blend in. Fincher uses angles to portray power dynamics. He also very rarely uses close-ups. He tends to shoot wide and reveals things about the story and the characters through including their surroundings. He only uses close-ups when it calls for something important, such as in this opening scene of The Social Network, when they switch from this to this,
because you're an asshole.
or this crucial scene in Fight Club, When Lisbeth says this,
I am insane.
or when he shows this, to tie into this.
He's an elderly
He
man.
promised me Venestrom's carcass on a plate. This isn't even the plate.
Next, there is CGI. So, when you think of Fincher films, you don't exactly think CGI. He isn't exactly the Transformers Avengers type of guy. But what's so great about Fincher CGI is that you often don't know that it's there. Sure, it's obviously used in The Social Network to superimpose Armie Hammer's face onto another actor's, as well as in this sequence. But he uses CGI a lot more than you would expect. For one, this entire chase scene is CGI, as well as all of the snow, the blood, and even the gap in Lisbeth's bangs. Well, for continuity's sake. Fincher also likes to show things rather than tell the audience. So the original Swedish film gave all the information by means of dull dialogue. Fincher, on the other hand, cultivates a more active and intelligent audience. He understands that people are capable of picking up on subtle hints and clues, and as a result, he is so much more effective. Like for instance, in this scene, you know her abusive guardian is trying to take advantage of her. He is standing up while she remains seated, avoiding eye contact. On the other hand, when she first meets Mikael, he willingly sits down while she remains standing. When she sees that he doesn't intend on taking advantage of her, she sits down but turns the chair around, showing that she is still guarded. I also like this scene at the beginning of the film. We are presented with information about Wennerstrom crushing Mikael in a lawsuit through a news segment that is muffled in the background. It is much more effective than this because it says so much more. We know that Mikael is trying to tune it out. We know that he's embarrassed at the situation, although he doesn't really outwardly say it yet. And we also find ourselves leaning in to be able to listen to the information being presented. Fincher also notably does this in The Social Network. This scene here isn't only the first scene in the movie, but it also shows the most important relationship in the film. But Fincher adds so much background noise and basically masks the dialogue. And he does this to pull the audience in, to make sure that they listen closely. And he does this again in this scene, which is also a pivotal scene to the plot. All in all, Fincher's version was definitely the better one. Cinematically, technically, and narratively, even though the two versions literally tell the same story. But sadly, it failed in the box office. Maybe US audiences simply aren't willing to accept something so dark and risque with themes involving anti-Semites and homosexuality as a blockbuster. But it still did pretty well though. And that's a start.
I think people are perverts. I've maintained that. That's the foundation of my career.
I guess.